So one thing that's often the beginning of conversation when it comes to American elections is this whole like debate about whether Nigerians or Africans in general should even care about elections in Nigeria and the West. You know that whole discussion, right? Where people are like, "Oh, why don't you focus on your own backyard? Like, was it colonial mentality or whatever like that that makes people so fixated on U.S. elections or just why don't you log out of social media and go and touch grass or whatever? To what extent do you guys subscribe to that perspective? Or the focus on U.S. elections is too much or is inappropriate for people in the third world, especially in dysfunctional basket case countries like Nigeria?
I think it's important, especially when we talk about geopolitics and all that. We keep an eye on what's going on, especially with powerful countries like the US, and maybe UK and all these countries that have like tremendous impact or influence on Africa and Nigeria, the economy, monetary policies or direction, all that. So we just have to know the stand of the dominant power and how it
Right.
relates to the national one, which is Nigeria, and then how to position or reposition ourselves, in relationship to the leadership in the country. So just for that knowledge, and then for a leadership that is interested in, working for the people and fixing up, it knows then it stands and position to,
Right.
it stands and position on certain issues and how to proceed. That's for
Yeah.
it's just for that reason. It's not that we are too interested in all the theatrics and
Right.
yeah.
Right. Right. Yeah. Okay. So it doesn't annoy you when people are like, um, there's some guy just based in Ilorin who's like tweets all day and night about the Democratic Party's internal politics or whatever. do you, Megan, what do you think? Are you with the OG or do you get annoyed by this locally trained US experts?
I sometimes get annoyed because, for the most part, the locally trained US experts don't know.
Unlike
More
us,
than
of
half the time,
course.
they don't even know what they're talking about. So, uh, I don't even lay any claim to being locally trained. I mean, I am not really, I'm not fascinated with the US. So, to give one example, I wasn't, fascinated with this last election. Uh, so I found myself
Yeah,
increasingly
right,
more interested in the
right.
US election after the fact, but after the election, so not before the election. Okay.
Right.
So yes, that's one part of it. So I think that you know any claim to expertise, about the US for me, is only that only interests me when I see the comparative advantage, with Nigeria or with Africa in general. Anything beyond that,
Right.
yeah. Uh, So I think I buy into a bit of how we frames it.
Yeah.
You know, uh, the geopolitics. To the geopolitics of it. So I'm interested in the Trump presidency to the extent that uh, I'd like to know how his stance on the oil and gas
Growth.
industry
Right.
affects oil prices, for instance. Uh, I'm interested in it to the extent that I'd like to know how it affects the Nigerian American population, there to some extent,
Yeah.
migration as a global issue, trade in
Yeah.
terms of tariffs and all of that. So, but after the fact, what really interests me is the issues upon which
Yep.
the electorate voted, and how they voted, what happened in King State. But that's just electoral politics, on the side. But yeah, that's.
Right.
But what you find is that many of these so-called experts then decide to compare uh, Nigeria to the US stupidly. you know,
Right. Yeah.
without recourse to levels of development, nature of democracy within different countries. So it doesn't quite, you know, uh, make sense.
Yeah. Well, I think we won't engage in much comparison or electoral analysis here today because, of course, there's a profusion of podcasts doing that probably today and in the coming weeks and years. And some of them are much closer to the action than we are. So that's not why we're here today per se. And so if you're here to hear our take on why Trump won in the U.S., you can log out. You can shut your computer or phone down. You can throw the phone away if you'd like, actually. But if you're here to hear about why Trump won in Nigeria, which is clear that he did, then stick around because that's what we're discussing today. And yeah, I mean, I suppose it's been an ongoing conversation for a while in several settings, trying to make sense of the admiration for Trump in parts of the third world. But I suppose the election gives us an opportunity to revisit that conversation, especially with reference to our own dear Nigeria. Yeah, I mean, I guess that's the reactions to the election really have brought this back to the fore, and it looks really like Kamala Harris didn't have very many fans in Nigeria. I mean, has that been your read as well, guys, as you perused the responses? I don't know how much you paid attention really to the Nigerian debates about, um, reactions really, I guess, more than debates, the Nigerian reactions to the election. But my sense in the WhatsApp chats, even on the left actually, is that there's some element of relief, at least, and in some cases even euphoria about Trump's victory. So I mean, yeah, has that been your experience as well in terms of your read on the discourse? Before we get to explaining it, I just wonder if you've also seen that dynamic.
What I've kind of noticed is the PR around Trump, it's been sky high. And of course, it directs conversation around him so much, So he seems to be the most interesting candidate, or the more interesting candidate between himself and Harris. And the Democratic Party itself, I think they've played all their hand. People kind of know that their stuff is cliche. They're not remarkable in any way, shape, and form. Like, okay, if this is, another 4 years of the Biden-esque type of administration, then what's the new radical thing that we might get, and that's why people are more.
Wait, you think that's what Nigerians are?
The PR is a major part for Trump. That's for me. That PR thing, is a huge part for Trump, and he's an interesting personality. So he's been like what involved in assassination attempts, like people try to kill him. So it just naturally draws interest more to
Right.
him, and then Nigerians are with that. This means that they really don't want him to be there. He's probably anti-establishment.
Right.
So it just all the PR surrounding Trump, his case in the courts and all that, just draws more of the conversation around Trump. And then the Democratic Party, that stuff is just just one way. Okay, Harris, she might be a lady, blah blah blah. Dealing with these levels of what problems I've got, like male-centered politics, all that. But Trump being a much more interesting personality is like a huge what political chip for him to like use or that he used for this election, and generating conversation around himself, what he's going to do that is radically different from the Democratic Party. So that was appealing. And Nigeria, we're so much more intertwined with entertainment and PR, propaganda, and if we take a mesh or if we try to overlay our political system with that of the American one, propaganda sells, propaganda certainly wins, and that's it. We're just responding to or mirroring the type of political system that we've got, and it's the person that can make the loudest noise, that can talk the craziest shit. That's the people that you most likely find yourself attracted to. If you don't step back and have like a logical analysis. So that's what I feel was a major political capital for Trump in Nigeria.
Sure. Yeah. For sure. No, I mean, so Maggie, I'm curious your take first of all on the breakdown of Democrats and Republicans in Nigeria from at least the discourse. I mean, OG is making it sound like Trump cleaned house in the Nigerian vote, not vote.
Not clean house per se, but we have like some people that are still attracted to the Democratic Party. The image of a lady becoming a president, and then they just some like very few people, they see him as a criminal. All this middle class ish people that are still more on the Democratic side, maybe because of just the name Democrat,
right.
Democrat, so it's not anything deeper than that.
Right. Okay, your take, Mega. And I mean, we'll come back to the depths of the, the reasons why, but just like, the read of, how the vote went in Nigeria. The vote, of course we didn't vote, but you get my point.
I mean, as easy as that question sounds, it's really difficult for me to answer, because like I said, I wasn't quite interested in the lead up to the election.
Yeah, so I mean, judging by the reactions.
Yeah, that's what even that's part of the problem. I don't think that I even if I was in any say maybe WhatsApp groups where the election were being discussed, I didn't quite pay any real attention to it. So perhaps the only thing that I can say is that, and this is just in general, I think that I've observed over time that there are Nigerians that the Nigerian commentariat is often divided between those who pander towards the Republican and then those who pander towards, but that there is no real defining feature for why they are split. If you ask me, so
yeah, you think so?
Yeah, I don't necessarily. I don't get any sense that there is.
Well, okay, but haven't you folks noticed the kind of like maybe I'm gonna overstate it, right? But that there's a kind of like association of the APC with the Democrats. So people are like, Obama brought Buhari. You know that whole discourse, right? That
you'll find those in the PDP as well too.
With the evidence being that David Axelrod is one of Obama's campaign people, was like advising the Buhari campaign, and after the whole Bring Back Our Girls thing was like supported by Michelle Obama. And what are the other pieces of evidence? The fact that the PDP lost power under Obama government, I think also kind of helped.
And that the claim that Jonathan makes that there was an interference by America.
That's fair. I mean, Jonathan himself, has said that too. So, I mean, I think it creates this whole image that our APC is somehow a little closer to the Democrats.
Yeah, but you see, I hear you. But so that there was a time when that happened, and maybe even up till now. But the truth of the matter is that in the elections that brought Barack Obama into power, which I kind of followed, it was historic in many ways. First black guy, African descent, and all of that. There were loads and loads of PDP, fans who were democratic at the time, So fast forward to Jonathan losing the election and the allegation that Barack Obama had pressed some button.
Yeah. He tipped the scales.
Yeah, he then tipped the scales, but not entirely, because I don't think that flew with many people, because there were also, quite a number of people who were beholden to PDP at the time, who also thought that Jonathan actually did a shoddy job, and then,
Right.
and that they saw it coming, and that there are people, there are quite a number of people whose method of analysis doesn't, the framework for analysis doesn't quite capture what job interference is. So they're not Marxist in that sense, or that they're not materialist in that sense, in the sense that that they think that there's an
No, but I mean, for some of the so let's introduce the other party. For some of the Labour Party obedient people, I think they were partially blamed Biden for Tinubu's victory, or they were the US imposed Tinubu on Nigeria. So they also are oh, it's great to see that the administration that imposed Tinubu, quote unquote, has been removed. So, there's this whole thing about if you're the US president when a certain Nigerian president wins, then the opposition to that president might also not like you and may prefer your opposition candidate. So I wonder if if you think that dynamic roughly maps onto ruling party supports Democrats, opposition supports Republicans, or ruling supports ruling, opposition supports opposition, something like that, or whether that's reading too much.
My reading of that would be that those obedient perhaps, and this is in quotes, perhaps a spillover from some PDP guys who have had grudges, who then spilled into so that movement. So those tensions are there. But then again, as the election results were being called, just when it became clear that Trump had won, there was a tweet or two that I saw to the effect that the announcement of that result, or the outcome of the elections, had sent a chill down the spines of politicians in Aso Rock, and
of Tinubu.
Yes. So you then begin to ask yourself, where does one stand? And then a couple of hours after, maybe a day after, I then saw a tweet by the guy who then handles P2B's own media, this social media communications, calling out Bayo Ononuga for a tweet, that he did a couple of months back, actually calling P2B the Donald Trump, or and that was a suggestion, alluding to the fact that P2B lies just as much as Trump does. So that's why I say I really don't. I never find any real defining feature, in why people are split. I think it's just about interests at the time. I've seen a big PDP stalwart, or not stalwart, a big PDP fanboy, say something to the effect that he was a Trump, that he's Trump, on the basis that a Trump presidency means well for his cryptocurrency stash. So it's crazy.
Right. No, but I think all the evidence you suggested still suggests. I mean, we can explore this further down the line. I don't want to detail this here, but still seems to roughly fall on the APC Democrat.
Oh, okay, does it?
PDP and Labour Trump leaning. You know what I'm saying? Because you said Bayo Ononuga, who's the APC, one of the APC spokespeople now, was dismissing the opposition by saying, "Oh, Obi is like Trump." So, which, by the way, I think is quite a stupid thing to say, and not because maybe there's no merit to the analogy. Analogies like that can be fun, but because Trump is popular in Nigeria. So why would you associate your opponent with someone who's very popular? Anyway, this isn't this.
You're talking like, say, by your guess sense.
Yeah. I suppose there's nothing surprising there. But I mean, yeah, that leads to the question of the popularity. I mean, so yes, I think I agree with OAG that there's evidently Trump is popular in Nigeria. And, you've given us one reason why, just propaganda, but might there be more to it than that? Or why else maybe do you feel? Because, I mean, it's not like the Democrats lack propaganda. I mean, they're closer to, I think, Hollywood and the music industry and such. Beyonce was one of the people speaking at Kamala Harris's, one of her campaign rallies or whatever. And of course, Nigerians are fairly plugged into the as you were also saying, cultural consumption um, economy. So why do you feel that the Democrats' closeness to or impact on kind of cultural world isn't filtering into more love for the Dems in Nigeria?
I think the democratization of media is the main part of it now, because it's not only through the
Okay.
traditional lines which the Democratic Party might be, associated with, that we get our press now, and I think again the Democratic playbook is getting boring and cliche. Like there's nothing fresh coming. With entertainment, it's like that
Right.
hit of dopamine that you're looking for. It's like WWE or like a wrestling match where like Mr. McMahon has to come up with
Yeah.
something new and fresh to keep
Yeah.
the thing going. So Trump,
I mean, including having Trump.
yeah,
show
including
up.
Trump,
I mean,
yeah, like so,
he was one of the
Trump
wrestlers.
was there. You know what I'm saying? So it like Trump serves that purpose of giving you something fresh on the political scene, and that we've seen that there's nothing new coming from the Democrats and Trump. This underdog story of him, beating the courts, beating assassination attempts, and then just saying some outlandish things, doing stuff like it just draws you closer to the people. And
That's funny, right? Because that didn't work so well for Tinubu,
no,
being a criminal, saying outlandish
no,
things.
now he be president now.
No, he won, but I mean, he didn't win on social media.
How it's just like how you like the mafia from afar, but when they are your community, So I think because of like the democratization of social media space or the media space in general, like the Democrats have lost.
Yeah, because I don't know about democratization, but yeah, I get your point.
Yeah, well, no, not democratization in its real sense, but like open access, where we don't get media or information through the traditional routes singularly.
Yeah.
So when I say democratization, I just mean it in like widespread now. So you can get your stuff directly on Twitter, go on some blogs. It's not through your CNN, and all these Fox News alone, So they are just opened. You can then hear directly from the participants, all their shenanigans, everybody twisting the narrative to fit themselves.
Yeah.
So it's just a struggle for who can serve the most entertaining show and then pally that up to victory. So the substance really and how it affects Africans, if we step back and look at it, what they are both saying, it's not like everyone is promising Africans a good time, and we've seen the democratic playbook. So there's nothing other than maintaining, American hegemony. And also it's not like the substance is different as such. It's just more entertaining for one person than the other. Yeah. So that's it.
No, I mean, okay. So you're always gesturing at the next question because I think that's probably where we should come back to, and maybe where we should end is on the subject of like what do we expect a Trump presidency to look like for Nigeria/Africa, which I know America is dying to answer, but I'm still curious about why Trump gets liked here, because I think that you're right. I mean, among probably younger people who are more social media inclined, there's a sort of like admiration for Elon Musk, I think, which we've probably touched on a little bit in the Dangote episode. And of course, Twitter is Elon Musk's platform. So people are often like, oh, thank you, Musk. Or one thing I appreciate about this Musk platform is, blah, blah, blah. So I think the kind of Musk-Trump thing and like the entrepreneurial gloss of the social media thing definitely appeals to younger people. But how about older people? Because I feel that even consumers of traditional media in Nigeria were also, just judging by WhatsApp, generally quite pleased by the results. I mean, what other elements? Are there other elements we're missing? Because I feel, there might be more to it than just social media propaganda. Mega, what do you think there?
I don't really get any thoughts on this, to be honest. I don't know.
Well, I mean, the other elements I would add is like, I think, just coming to mind now is to some extent the social conservatism of the Republican Party is appealing, right? Like, the other thing people hate Obama for in Nigeria is that he, like, quote unquote, brought gay, right? So I think
No,
so.
but okay, but you see, there's also the belief. I think I don't know if it's always existed or it's something maybe I am just noticing it that the part of why Democrats aren't quite like maybe even, and this might cut across generations, the fact that there's this sense that the Democrats are a
Okay,
moralizing force.
right. They talk down.
They talk down on third world countries or on developing countries, and if you're being honest, there's a bit of that exists. Um, Whereas the Republican, especially under this Trumpian era, now the man speaks it from the mind, you know. Um, so even though he's saying rubbish, most of half of the time, or he's even lying half the time, but you know, does the average Nigerian care? He doesn't. I don't think he does.
Right.
So I think that there's that aspect to the expectation being that even with make America great again, that mantra. The focus for Trump is primarily on the American nation,
Right.
and that he has no business trying to influence So I think that people are at ease with that you know that feeling that
Right. Like he's gonna stay out of our business.
yeah, but that's a bit of naivety. But anyways, you can allow that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's
Yeah. Right. So I mean, do you think then is one could say that there is a certain respect for nationalists in a context where we've come to see our own political leaders not nationalist enough. So it's kind of like if only we had somebody who's saying "Make Nigeria Great Again" or something similar, on who you could believe, um, then that would be great. So seeing Trump do that for his own people is like, yeah, that's great. And then the foreign policy implication maybe is that again, yeah, maybe it's naive, but it's the expectation that let him focus on his own backyard and then leave us alone, and that will be good for us
yeah, but
somehow.
yeah, but how do you reconcile that with the fact that there's almost no Nigerian government? You know, those that are in power or those that could have been in power that wouldn't have gone to the West, begging bull. So um, it's not a question of whether Trump's temperament is to stay away from the business of other nations. It's more a question of aren't we always going to go to them to ask for A, B, C,
Right.
either through the IMF, World Bank, or WTO, you know, uh, in,
Yeah.
in that sense. So that's why I say there's always that bit of naivety in that line of thinking.
Yeah, but I mean, some people would say that at least they're not coming to us, and us in general being us more generally conceived, including the global south, which is that, okay, in theory, if Trump is going to be more isolationist, then it means there'll be less American boots on the ground in, like, you know, parts of Africa or the Middle East or whatever, or, less support, for instance, for Ukraine and these sorts of U.S. foreign policy interventions that could have destabilizing effects. Um, you know, like global South economies. Take for instance the price of wheat in the war of and the impact that's the war in Ukraine has had on that, and of course the impact that's had on um, the economy here. So, I mean, do you think is there an element of it that actually is fair? I mean, now I know we're talking about impacts, but still, just from the perspective of the discourse, do you think that's factoring in a bit these kinds of calculations, um, or is it much more surface level?
I think he's just, saying what he has to say to get, his base to vote for him. But the foreign policy might not change fundamentally, like, because he can't go against American interests and multinationals, all that, So if they have to keep some extra boots on ground or do what they have to do historically that we've known them to do interfere, all that, I think he'll do it. He'll just have to do like, a cost analysis of actions or inactions on the different continents that they occupy, or places that they are. So he will do whatever it is that they need to do to float the Fortune 500 and all the companies that need. Yeah, so he'll do what he has to. There's no mistake about that on my own part. So yeah.
Well, but one thing he won't do that makes Nigerians like him is export cultural liberalism to Nigeria, which of course people hate, right? I think that's one element that's maybe missing from the conversation so far is God. I mean, I think people are like, people are like, God clearly supports Trump because Trump is more godly. I mean,
Christian values, all that.
Which is absurd, yeah. I mean, Christian values, but I think even like for Muslim people around here, you hear people saying things like, we're not going to have to see, wokeness basically take over the streets here under Trump, since he's a man of God, or at least God's keeping him alive during assassinations and stuff. So, I mean, assassination attempts. So yeah, I mean, that seems to be a factor here as well, and probably in a lot of the developing world, right? That sort of the successes of social conservatism reap a lot of propaganda benefits for people like Trump.
Yeah. That's like a cornerstone of his victory. Leave it with me. It's a cornerstone of his victory because, Nigerians will get carried away by those things that we see. If not, why would they spend billions on like advert posters, bringing musicians, all that? And you see all these rallies, no substance at all. It's just wave the broom, wave the umbrella, and sing and get everybody to get merry. Even the new one, Labour Party, Mama, Papa, Pikin. What? It can be killing. You can be making your Mama and Papa, Pikin suffer. It's not. It doesn't mean anything. What are the substance? What are the So it don't mean anything. So unless we get substance, and then we look at the substance in relation to the lives of the people, and if we know the history of the United States and what's in they do, and their policies, all that, we should be really careful about just blindly accepting people because they try to shoot him and he didn't die or something like that. So we have to be careful about that and all these things. They should know that no president is going to go against the American enterprise. He's not going to go against the stock market. He's not good. He's a businessman to start with, so he's not going to go against profit and the very thing that keeps American hegemony afloat. Make America great again. He's on top of other, that's standing on other countries, based on how the foundation of their country has been laid.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, that's fair. So I take it from that you don't buy the view that Trump is going to, like the Trump isolationism, at least rhetorically, is going to lead to like less bombings in Africa, less troops deployed, just a more peaceful international arena where the US is playing less of an aggressor role, with all the possible economic benefits that could generate for Nigeria. I mean, is that fair to say that neither of you really sees that as a possible outcome here?
Trump na slim plating now. No, Trump don't complicate much. Yeah, it does. As far as Trump is concerned, his presidency in America ends with trade. How American jobs will stay inside America. How if you bring products we not they made in America, how it go increase tariff. So those are the things. And Trump is well aware that what brought him, got him this presidency at least is the economy. in the US, which ironically is beginning to strengthen. But you know, I get the sense that the American voting public is probably as let me not say that, because to say that would be to shade the Nigerian voting public too, but maybe not as informed as people make them out to be. Because I mean, in some quarters, a big part of why Harris lost was that inflation was high. But inflation was what basically, the economy was what kicked Trump out in the first place, and then got Biden in. And it's ironic now that, within certain quarters, it's being touted as why Harris didn't win and then Trump is back, with inflation being the real sticky point. So that's what Trump is going to try and do. Well, quote unquote, he has a track record for having done that until COVID. So this is a post-COVID thing, and that the expectation is that that's where his primary focus would be. So how's he going to handle Vietnam? How's he going to handle the Ukraine-Russian war? Is he going to pump in as much money as the Biden administration has pumped into that war? The answer is almost certain. Hell no. In fact, I hear on the campaign trail, he had begun to say stuff like he'll end the Ukrainian war in 24 hours. What for? Of course, he's a bullshitter. So what are the details? Nobody knows. So that's Trump for you. He's not going to come and try. He doesn't claim to be an intellectual. He claims to be a businessman. Even though
I know, but that's neither here nor there now, because we're not talking about whether he claims to be an intellectual as much as like whether his business-centric policy that's America-centric will have some positive benefits for Africa. And I think he's like more the folks who consider themselves to be informed anyway that support him will make that argument. Take for instance your good friend David Hunde, who has been a while. It's been a while since he was referenced on the show. Of course, he's a close friend and supporter of the show. As everyone knows. I said, take him for instance, right? I think he's he's one of the people who was like, oh, like the end of the defeat of the liberal establishment in America is great for Africa because what's his argument? Because they're not going to the Trump people are going to withdraw, like support for wars. They're gonna focus inward, so they're going to be less interested in like to reduce, to doing imperialism here, I guess. So, I think it's not so much that they think Trump is smart and that's why he's going to avoid Africa, whatever it is, or it's more so that they think his emphasis on business and on like basically isolationism, reshoring production, rebuilding the American economy, etc., will somehow benefit us because then they stay out of our business. Of course, OAG's take is that like they won't stay out of our business. That's a fantasy, right? If I'm getting you correctly.
They might interfere in other ways. Like it won't be the sly and cunning, democratic way where they're more slick with it. They might be much more direct. They might be much more direct. Who knows? Yeah.
Two things for me. The first one is I want to contest this. Because what I've heard, what one or two people have said to me that the Honduran guy is saying at the minute is that he own be say that the Biden administration bring guaranteed a Tinubu presidency, and that this happened because the Biden administration needed a stooge. Okay, and that Tinubu was the classic example. That as far as stooges went, that Tinubu was a classic. So he basically was a pawn in their hands. This is, and I have no reason to doubt what the information that I get, because this sounds like classic Honduran. All right, so the point is this, that because of course everybody knows he was invested in the Obi campaign, and he's selling tickets to the Obi campaign was that Tinubu had drug-related issues in the US, and that he was, at least, if he wasn't a convict, he was short of being he was a few steps short of being a convict, right? But that he had filed for all sorts of whatever he filed for to get, documents released to prove his theory, and that at every step of the way.
Like, I know Hyundai is your main man, but I don't want you to get too bogged down.
No, I'm not getting into it. I'm just saying. I'm just trying to say. I don't think that's
you and him can sort this out in your personal chat.
No. I don't. I'm just saying that this is. No. I'm just saying that.
I like that you're just taking all this slander.
Yeah, no. I'm just If you didn't bring in where I'm just saying. Yeah. I don't think that that's where he's coming from. I think that this is where he's coming from. At least, so I can move on, because I think I've made my point that this is where Hyundai is actually coming from with his support.
No, but it's all the same thing now. It still amounts to the same thing, basically. That.
Oh, okay.
That the liberals tip the scales in favor of candidates that destroy Africa for various reasons, and that conservatives, especially the America First type, the Make America Great type of variant, will then usher in a golden age for Africa, because they no longer will tip the scales in favor of stooges. Which is, I mean, I do,
How?
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
how?
It sounds nice, but why?
On paper, yes.
Why would they? Like, they suddenly.
How?
Yeah, caring about America's interests then suddenly no longer includes caring about America's global interests. I mean, that's kind of like confusing to me. So
the second point that I was going to make, anyways, the biggest pointer to what a Trump presidency might look like can be deduced from his choice of chief of staff. And I think that if anybody is looking at how Trump foreign policy would be like, especially for maybe developing countries, because I don't want to even say third world countries, it would be from his choice of his chief of staff, who I gather is
his chief of staff,
the chief lobbyist of lobbyists, and anybody
Susie Wiles.
Yes, Susie Wiles. Yeah, and that she. If you understand how the lobby group works in America, it then begins to give you a sense of. So, in fact, analysts are saying that to say that Trump would be isolationist in that sense contradicts that his choice of chief of staff contradicts the notion that he will be isolationist in that sense. So that's why part of what's being said.
No, but I'm not sure I quite see the argument there. I mean, I know that she was a lobbyist, and that one of her clients supposedly was IPOB, indigenous people of Biafra.
You don't come.
Secessionist group, which is of course also allegedly a close, very very big fans of our show. So, which will surprise no one, but. Anyway, yes, jokes apart, I guess there's some reports that his chief of staff, her organization anyway, took some money from the indigenous peoples of Biafra and Nigeria to lobby for more favorable U.S. policy towards the indigenous peoples of Biafra. I'm not sure that the effort was very successful, because I'm not getting the sense that the U.S. is more favorable towards Biafra. But the wider question I'm raising is I still don't see exactly what
Trump was.
Oh, is it?
Okay. Yeah, but there's a sense that he was, because he spoke to Buhari about the killings of Christians, or that he mentioned it,
No, sure. I think that the Christian lobby in general in America is much. They're like the people in America who want to frame conflict in Nigeria as religious. That lobby is much more successful than like any secessionist lobby per se. So, American foreign policy discourse around Nigeria will and has for a long number of years, it's likely to continue to talk about religious freedom, referring to like, oh, stop killing Christians, which of course is a very particular way to think about the conflict here. But But I don't know if this, if any specific secessionist agenda has gained much ground. But I might be wrong.
Maybe the secessionist agenda they talk about though. Nobody secessionist. In fact, I was even speaking to Susie Wiles, and her lobby for the company that she's affiliated, lobby for IPOB. I was speaking more generally about
it was much more prominent in Buhari's
lobby
time.
for business interests, across the world, So the lobby group for some Chinese firms, they seem to be done some job for Heinz. Heinz is also affiliated with the P2P syndrome. If you know, you know. If you know, you know. Yeah. So I mean that's what I was speaking to. So that's the contradiction that I was looking to point out. In terms of this isolationism or isolationist tendency, rather than and the general thinking that and I think
hang on, maybe I'm being a bit thick, but I still don't really see how what you're saying about lobbying and isolationism.
Yeah. So let me make this. Let me drop this. Maybe it might make sense, right? I think that we're in a world that is increasingly deglobalizing. Okay. And that and that Trump is the poster boy for a deglobalizing world. All right.
Sure.
The point I make about Susie is that the line of work that she's done for decades, is one that embraces. In fact, I don't know the literature. I haven't really studied the literature around lobbyist groups, but the sense that I get just from following conversations, over the years, is that industry, the rise of that industry would, I suspect, be in tandem with the rise of globalization, and I mean the last wave of globalization, say from maybe the 70s. So that's the sense in that's the sense in which I'm pushing my own argument.
Okay, like big foreign groups helped to fund the rise of lobbying groups, right? Of course, like tobacco and stuff played a huge role in that as well, like local industry, but foreign affiliated businesses and governments have also put in money there. Fair enough.
She did some work for PDP, even though I don't know what she did.
Did you say PDP?
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's funny. Yeah.
In 2019, so let's know what we're.
Okay, yeah, but maybe I haven't let you land because I guess I still do.
No.
So now deglobalization is happening and Trump represents that.
Yeah.
But then he hires somebody that comes out of an industry that kind of was you're saying gained a lot or sort of was boosted by globalization. So isn't that more contradictory than self-evident?
Yeah, it's that contradiction that I'm trying to point out as to this insistence that he would. I mean, so I'm buying into where OAG is coming from. That he will be hands off. What else is happening everywhere else in the world? Because he's not going to be hands off China easy. He's not going to be hands off Russia.
He might be very hands on, unfortunately.
Yeah, so that's the general. This is just to.
Okay. Sorry,
you don't hear now, I mean.
And maybe everybody else. I might be the last to the party, but basically, Trump's deglobalization thing is more talk than real. I mean, that when you start looking at the appointments, then it points out that it's going to be a lot more of the same rather than a real isolationism that somehow benefits us. That's if isolationism can benefit us anyway. But yeah, okay. I think that makes a lot of sense. And I mean, one of the other reasons for that to me would be that a lot of foreign policy is carried out by bureaucrats. So politicians come and go, but I don't, will USAID dramatically change now because it's under Trump? Will the existing programs and stuff, will they really change dramatically?
Budget go less, so if it less.
Yeah, maybe budget is less slightly, but will it be a dramatic shift? The budget for foreign aid is very tiny anyway.
No, I'm just saying because if you take his stance on NATO, for instance, you go no say budget will less. So
Yeah, right. Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about the military element. Maybe as a way to wrap up. I'm curious about that. So yeah, clearly there will probably be less money for NATO. There's maybe going to be less money for Ukraine. I don't know about Israel. There's probably going to continue to be money for Israel because that's just wired. That's hardwired right into the budget. I think probably.
Unless you want me to impinch him.
Right. So yeah, I mean, the NATO thing, the Ukraine thing, will that somehow benefit us in Africa? I mean, is there much to gain? Assuming that the rhetoric and the reality match up eventually, which I'm sure there'll be some gap. But yeah, is there any optimism that we can find there?
Yeah, there's a school of thought that thinks that if Trump manages to quell the beef between Russia and Ukraine, I think it's established knowledge. There's a lot that African countries, especially dependent on Ukraine for, e.g. urea, I think a bit of fertilizer, wheat is still, So I think so. If he gets that going, I think that benefits Africa, largely one way or the other, and that of course he also benefits from the Russian angle, Europe. Even though yes, all the sanctions that have been heaped on Russia, what it has just done was to reduce the volume of trade, not entirely wipe it out, because Russian products have found ways to get around other countries.
And of course, I think we're talking about like benefits for consumers, not necessarily producers, right? Because then if whoever in Africa is now trying to replace the wheat, the drop in Ukrainian wheat, they're gonna be out of business if Ukraine is back pumping wheat into our
markets. As a stopgap measure, because increasingly African leaders have shown that they're not quite focused. It's all talk, So when you talk about production, nobody's talking about everybody's just talking about it, but there's no real work that's gone into it. So it sounds like a real cheap thing to say, but when you come to the weeds of it, you find that very little work is being done. So to that extent, I see that.
Except maybe with rice, but we can
because then they share them now. Because then they share them for
share rice. You're coming.
You record the orisification of democracy.
Yeah. So I don't yield the floor on that point. So, but that's my feeling. Yeah.
Yeah. Fair enough.
Yeah, I go with Michael actually that because the world is intertwined more than we can imagine. So cause and effects today, back and forth today.
Right.
So there are a lot of opportunities that can spring up from like having peace, in different regions, and even new lines can be opened up for like interaction.
So I think Nigerian Scam Podcast officially takes the position that the price of bread in Nigeria will drop from 1.5 to around 700 naira or so, 500. Now that Trump is president,
can we
have that?
You can pay me.
No, propaganda for can pay me that again. What's the price of bread not drop?
I tell you.
Yeah.
But if it drop, Dangote get petrochemical. So part of there's a lot of noise about PMS, but there's the fertilizer unit, and I think he wants to also increase production of wheat.
Yeah, right. Well, yeah, okay. So then that could have paradoxical implications if Ukraine is then giving us more fertilizer, probably cheaper, lower cost of production, despite being half blown up than Dangote. So then maybe.
But I can't bank on Dangote's prices, sure. That's
the thing, right? So I guess a lot remains to be seen. To sort of attempt a summary. There might be some, if there is peace, in the Russia-Ukraine axis at least, then there could be some benefits for Africa and Nigeria and Nigerian consumers and some producers. Less producers than consumers, but anyway, I mean we're consumers, so that would be nice. But yes, of course, that depends on the link between how strong the link is between rhetoric and reality, and and of course we've not talked about China. So if that happened, if they became more aggressive there with Taiwan and thing, then surely that would make prices of stuff more expensive everywhere as well. So perhaps another paradox there.
Can you flesh out the thinking behind that a bit, at least? Just, I mean, don't go into it deeply, but just for the.
Well, I mean, my sense is, and so of course I'm not an expert. And in fact, where I was going to go next is to say maybe this all calls for a conversation with somebody who knows a lot more about international economic relations, and then can maybe reflect a bit more. Someone like that maybe could give us more insight. I think my own limited understanding, informed by my limited understanding, I was going to say that it strikes me that any kind of intensification of the so-called trade war with China, especially if it led to more, would probably not disrupt a lot of trade, and trade disruptions tend to increase the price of stuff. So that's where I was coming from with that. But of course, in terms of the specifics to what kind of commodities in particular, and how it would impact on the price of bread or commodities here, I don't, of course, I don't know enough to talk about that stuff, but that's just my feeling. So I was trying to sort of point out that there appear to be a lot of contradictions and a lot of things that we still don't know. But in general, peace would be good. so if they can deliver that, that would be great. But I'm not going to hold my breath.
Yeah, that's the main thing.
There's also the angle of how he handles Iran, and what that means for oil prices, vis-a-vis Israel. I mean, and now I think these are the things that really
or should
concern us as Nigerians, as Africans, or should, you're right, because of the way that increasingly, during the last wave of globalization again, how African countries have then been wedded into the global economic capitalist framework, so that one thing happens between superpowers or world powers, that there's a trickle down effect, especially with a view to how oil and petrol drives most of our economies this way.
But of course, rather than talking about that, we much prefer generally to talk about how God saved Trump's life from assassination and how he's likely to be much better for morality, which of course is pretty hilarious given his personal scruples. But
on a lighter note, now I remember this thing where they talk. So you get one guy that they call Very Dark Man.
And obviously another huge supporter of our show. I mean, it goes without saying. But please.
Don't start. I saw maybe like a second or two, or maybe less than a minute of the video where he was singing praises of the Trump election, and so I stopped short of where he said his interest was, and then he put up he linked up to another video where he was talking about transgender, and that's so I imagine how a Trump presidency. I mean, that's the feeling that I went away with. Immediately I stopped worrying because I just ended the thinking, like, how does a Trump presidency amount to your interest being anti anti
Yeah.
gay or you, you, your misgivings towards transgenders.
Yeah,
I
it's
mean,
totally absurd.
we hear all
Yeah,
sorts of things.
it's like
I mean, I
people
don't get it.
spend their money to support anti-wokeness in America. It's kind of like you guys are not serious people. I mean, that's ultimately like you want to fight wokeness versus anti-wokeness. That's what you want to buy data to load in your phone to fight in the morning. I'm like, wow, we've got problems.
Oh, so that's where the guy has been learning because he has had a running battle, over the last month or two with this
Right,
Bobrisky fellow.
Which of course we should come back to, um, or not. I mean, I don't, maybe it's not for us to discuss, but but yeah, I think that was missing partially in our explanation for Trump support. And I think it's important to note that there is a lot of social conservatism, right, in the country, and and
Yeah, it's a big part of
yeah,
why he's popular, I guess.
and
Now
I
you
think
now
also
you think,
part of why
yeah.
Kamala Harris was probably not um, very as popular, and it's because also I think she's a woman, right? I mean, I don't want to overstate that, but it surely is part of the calculus for a lot of people as well that they're maybe not ready for a woman president of America. um, Sad as it might be.
The way the way Britain is ready for Kemi Day.
The way Nigerians are ready for a British woman leader of the Conservative Party. Yes, I think. Yeah.
God damn it.
Um,
The world is
I guess that should be another episode and another day, and we should probably leave it here for today, right?
Yeah. And what? Reading group?
Oh yeah, big announcement. Oh, you want to take that away?
Yeah, this is just to announce that we're floating up a reading group. And it's going to be interesting. We have a bunch of topics to discuss, and we have like archive or a folder where we can get reading items. We take a topic, we'll keep reading items, and we come together to discuss it. We have like scheduled discussions around it, So, but for more information about that, you can check out our page on Twitter, and just see what's up with that. Join if you're interested, and let's keep the knowledge forward.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Nice. Yeah, you're welcome. No, I mean the listener is welcome to join the reading group, which this time will also be on the topic of the structural adjustment programs. In theory, that's a relevant topic to today. But if you disagree, you should come let us know by joining the group. Excellent. So, fellas, I think that's place to wrap it up.